episode 2 of season 2 of Loki, did I miss something? Was there an episode that just didn't make it to the show? Or maybe like a big chunk of a script of one of the episodes that got cut out? Because like last I remember, end of episode 1, Loki is kind of working with the TVA. He's told them about Kang. He's fixed his time slipping thing. And also one of the 3 heads of the TVA, like the human heads of the TVA, not the little robot lizard guys, but like one of the actual people is gonna go do bad stuff. That jerky TVA agent X5 is going to do something. It's not clear if that is with that other TVA leader who's gonna do something, who's making moves, or if he's just doing his own thing. And then we find out that Sylvie is in Oklahoma. So that was where we left off. And this week starts with Loki and Mobius now just in charge of the TVA, kind of, right? This rogue agent seems to be gone and everything's kind of business as usual, right? It's like we're back in episode 2 of season 1. They are following X5 and he is in the 70s being a movie star and they have to capture him so they can find Sylvie. And it really does feel like there's an episode in the middle of these two where Loki and Mobius reorganize the TVA and also figure out that X5 knows where Sylvie is. And to get to Sylvie, they're gonna have to find X5. And then they do a little bit more time digging. And they find out, oh, hey, he's this movie star in the 70s. And then they go to the time period when he actually exists. Like, honestly, I can see how the missing episode would end. It would be like Mobius and Loki are in like present day or something like that. Or they're in the TVA and they're scrolling through like microfilm trying to find different newspapers, trying to figure out where this guy is. And then an ad comes up, which is a trailer for a re-release of an old movie from the 70s. And then Loki and Mobius are like, hang on a second, who's that? And then it's like, oh, that's X5. The guy they're looking for is a movie star from the olden days. And it's like, oh, that's where they're going next. Now, I want to say, I don't think this episode was bad. I do think we are maybe skipping forward at a pace that is somewhat frantic. And you could say this about a lot of the things, especially like Loki and some of these multiverse things. It is kind of disorienting, but I do think like by the end of this episode, we have stopped this main villain person. We have recruited Sylvie. The TVA seems to be more or less taken care of besides this time strand problem that OB is dealing with. But I guess like I am still asking this question. I was asking this question last week is what are we doing here? What is Loki season 2? What is episode 6 going to be like? Like by the end of episode 2 of season 1, it became pretty clear that this show is going to be about whatever's going on at the TVA. Like there's some sort of mystery. And if you extrapolate that and kind of look at how these usually go, there's somebody in charge secretly in the TVA that's pulling all the levers and we got to figure out who that is. And then by the end of episode 6, we figure out that's Kang, that's he who remains, and that explains everything. With this, like looking at where it is now, looking at where I kind of expect it's going to go with multiverse saga stuff all, connecting, I just cannot guess what this is supposed to be. Like it seems like, without spoiling things that have been the post-credit scene in other movies, OB says they need to find someone with the temporal aura of Kang, which means they're probably going to go back and find one of the variants, which is going to be Victor Timey in the Quantumania post-credit scene. But then what happens after that? I'm not saying that it needs to be so obvious, but it does feel slightly aimless. And if it wasn't Loki, I'd be like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. But because it's a show that was already good once, I do feel like it is at least going somewhere. But I guess the pace of episode 2 and, all the things that happened, I also feel like we just didn't spend a ton of time with the TVA agent. Not even just the guy. X5, I think we spent a good amount of time with, but his boss, that I do not know their names, but the woman in charge of the TVA who is bad. I don't think we spent nearly enough time with her, finding her, worrying about what she was gonna do, right? I feel like we got this Sylvie arc, right? Sylvie went to McDonald's and she was kind of hiding out there and having fun and living a life and she seemed happy. Now we'll learn that all the timelines have been pruned and it seems like including that one, like, cause that is a different timeline. So it makes you wonder, like, that sucks for Sylvie. I feel like that feels like something that we should, because I remember in that moment, I go to the TVA agent, she's like, those are people. All those universes are billions of people. And I'm like, I guess, I don't know, they just kind of seem like lines. Like, we didn't spend time in that universe, Like, I feel like the way you would do that, and again, this would be the other thing that would happen in fake episode 2, we'd spend time with Sylvie in Oklahoma. And maybe, like, Sylvie has a power now where she, because she is, like, the new He Who Remains, and she has the extra cool tempad, she can like see into alternate realities. So like she can see what these people would be like on the sacred timeline. And maybe she can see like, oh, this universe that I'm in, this timeline, this branch, we've created something better. This person that I'm spending time with now, like my boss at the McDonald's, is happier because I'm here. And that is a good thing. And that's why this whole like branching timelines thing, not all following the script, like it may be better for some people, but being on script might be worse for some people. Look, now I'm making people happy. Because that's all Sylvie seems to want to do, or at least seems to want to do. She wanted to be free, and because of how unhappy the lack of freedom made her, spreading freedom, I imagine, that character would want to do that so that she can spread it to as many people as possible. So then having an episode where Sylvie spends time with these people, builds these relationships that would not exist were it not for her being involved. This is proving this thing that she did, this risk that she took was worth it. And then at the end of like episode 3, or like, you know, what was episode 2, all those people get pruned and everything in that universe goes back to normal, to this unhappy version of their universe, right? Like that guy just disappears, and then we check back in on him and oh, he's, you know, in jail or something like that, right? That is what it felt like we were missing for these moments to matter, is more time with Sylvie and more time finding X5. And like, I'm not saying that I think the show needs to take longer or they should spin their wheels or something like that. It just felt like a little quick, you know? It'd be like if you're watching Jurassic Park and you're like, you know, they get to the island, they all meet each other, they go on the little tour of the lab, and then hard cut to the T-Rex escapes. And you're like, I think there was some stuff between these two that would have helped kind of build some tension, set up some things for the future, and like maybe everything doesn't have to be the most exciting thing at that moment, but it's like there's a reason why that stuff exists. I'm not saying that this episode definitely was missing things like that. It feels weird. And I've seen a couple other people say some version of this. Like I watched it a couple hours after it aired, so by the time I saw it, this would have been on Twitter. But you know, I saw people like, hey, did they accidentally upload the 3rd episode instead of the 2nd one? Because this seems like the 3rd episode. And I'm not saying this is what I think happened, but I can certainly imagine a world where Loki season 2 is kind of this, but spread out a little bit more. And then they go, actually, we want to add at least one episode of stuff for the next season, or stuff for Secret Wars or Deadpool or whatever the next multiverse project is. So let's make that episode 6, and then let's smush the rest of these together. And it's like, okay, well, 3, 4, and 5, those pretty much have to be the way they are because that's the climax. Was there something we can cut out of 2? And I'm not saying that that's what I think happened, but it's just like that would kind of explain why the pacing in these first 2 episodes was so strange. Now it's starting to line up with some of the reviews we'd read about like episodes 1 through 4, which is apparently what people saw, where they were like, it's kind of all over the place. I like it, but it's a little messy. I'm starting to sense that. Now, that being said, it is still very good. I still very much like this show for all the reasons we always liked it. Tom Hiddleston is great. Like, he is so good. It is so refreshing. And like, I feel like I heard a lot of people say this, including the person I was watching this with. She was like, when Loki started doing the like, I would turn a corner and then Loki's there, he would turn back, Loki's there, shadows pick a guy up. The person was like, oh right, he's magic, he does Loki stuff. And I'm like, yeah, he does, right? It's been a while since we saw him like do full Loki stuff. He's mainly just a guy now. It's kind of like Mobius or any of these agents, with the added power of he can like fling knives out of his hands and then like, you know, toss them or whatever. And like he could do some magical stuff. But this was, I'd say, some of the most fun magic I think we've seen in a while in one of these shows, because a lot of it was in camera or however they did this, but those shots of like, you know, he turns a corner, there's Loki, turns around, there's Loki again. Like, that was all incredibly slick. The shot where the shadows were catching him was wonderful. All that stuff with the punks that caught X5, that was super funny. And like, it's the kind of thing where like, even if this plot doesn't make sense and this pacing is a little weird and maybe, you know, big picture, some of it doesn't totally pan out, I'm still having a blast watching it, because it's really good. It's really well made. Tom Hiddleston's cracking on. He's really fun to watch. Owen Wilson is good in this one. I do think it's easy to take for granted how good Owen Wilson is in this show, because most of what he's doing is standing around going, Loki, don't do that. That's not good, Loki. And Loki will be like, I want to do this. And here's a big monologue. And then Owen Wilson will be like, I don't know, that's not a good idea. But like, it is a solid, like, it's a balance. It's a very delicate balance, this good cop, bad cop thing. And, you know, these partners who, one of them is this very verbose Asgardian god. And then one of them is like kind of a, you know, middle management pencil pusher dude who really wants a jet ski. But like beyond that, it's just kind of a normal guy. you know, I love the design of the automat. I like automats. I don't want to necessarily make automats again, but I do remember like when I was a kid, and like, I'm not that old, but like in like, I don't know, the early 90s, there's like still one in New York, and you would go to it and it would be cool. It was like a throwback and a retro thing, but like the idea of them is cool. At that point though, just put the whole key lime pie out. If it's only key lime pies in the automat, just have a big pie in the break room. I don't think they have to pay for it. I hope they don't have to pay for it. Mobius doesn't have money, does he? Do they have like TVA dollars with like little He Who Remains and missed minutes on them instead of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington and stuff? Is there like a system of money? How does money work? If they go to a different time, do they also grab some cash that would fit in that time? You figure, right? They should, at least, if they're not, because they're gonna have some trouble. Again, the production design in the show is fantastic though. Like the interrogation room, everything OB is doing is great. The weird squisher machine thing is pretty cool. I really like this show. I do think if I could add one joke or one line in the episode, there's the bit where Loki is interrogating X5 and he locks Mobius out of the jail cell. So he's inside the interrogation room, like prison cell thing with X5. Loki finishes the interrogation. Mobius comes back in the room. He's all cool because he was also always in on it. And maybe Loki says something like, see, you told me you didn't think it was going to work, but I pulled it off pretty well. And Mobius could just be like, well, yeah, I just didn't think you'd buy the whole locking the door from the inside. You can't usually do that with jail. You know, even in an interrogation room, you can't lock it from the inside for this reason specifically, right? Like, especially locked that even I with the keys cannot unlock from the outside. It's cute though. I mean, like, and it's the kind of thing where like, if this was a show that was more serious or where it was just boring, you would get bored and you would just start thinking about stuff. And your brain would go like, what is going on in this scene? What else is there? Hey, you locked the prison door from the inside. That's weird, right? And you would have that thought. But because Loki is so good and it's so engaging and so fun to watch and well written and all these things, you don't care. And that's, I think, the big thing with plot holes is like, if you are being like an honest broker and you're not just coming in to pick the movie apart, when you start noticing stuff like that, it's usually a sign like, oh yeah, I don't care about this other stuff that's going on. This is the most interesting thing here to me, is whether the door is locked or unlocked. So like, this isn't good, but like, that's, you know, a good show, a good movie can get you through that. It's great. And then we should give as much latitude as we possibly can as the people watching these shows, because then we have a better time. Why am I talking about this? I guess like because the episode's pretty much over, right? There's not too much else. We get a little bit more Eugene Cordero, a little bit more Pillboy. Now he is interacting with OB. That's good, I guess. I've seen a lot of theories about what OB's deal is. OB is truly this character or whatever. I don't think that's true. I don't think there's really much to him besides just he's there and he's kind of doing what it is that he does. Like, I think in a world without Kihei Kwan's meteoric rise in Everything Everywhere All at Once, this could, any of the other TVA agents we already know could be kind of doing what this role is. Like Hunter B-15, this would be what she's doing through this episode. Is she'd be like repairing the thing, and Loki would be talking to her in the past, and she would be working with the time stream. Like, I don't think it would need to be that, but I just think like there's certain characters like Agatha Harkness where you watch that show and you're like, oh, this is something. Like, something's going on. This is, maybe it's Mephisto, maybe it's, I mean, it was Agatha Harkness. It wasn't like she was calling herself that in the show. But like, that was like this fun little guessing game. And I don't want people to be disappointed. Not when this character does not end up being secretly Kang or whatever. Just with this character, it's just like, yeah, no, that's who he was. He was Obi, that guy who we saw and spent time with, and the same. I do think that would be a wild way to get out of the Kang situation. And again, not saying that Jonathan Majors is or is not guilty or whatever. There's a trial and that'll all get sorted out. But if the results of that trial ends up forcing Marvel to fire Jonathan Majors, it'd be really funny if Kihei Kwan is Kang now. If like at the end of the episode 6, we see a flashback where Kihei Kwan like does plastic surgery to look like Kang, kind of like a Speed Racer at the end of that movie. We're like, oh, Rex Racer was the guy we thought he was. Like, it would be like that, but with Kihei Kwan. Then it just in the future would be like, that's Kang. And Paul Rudd would be like, I'm almost positive it was a very different looking guy. But also, I've done a lot of Pym particle stuff, so I could be very confused. Everyone would be like, you were confused, Paul Rudd. He looks like this and looked like this during your movie. Let's never check. Either way, like, Loki's good. it's such a weird week for the MCU. There's so much chaos. There's a book that I'm very excited to read that I just got from Comic-Con. There's lots of reports of things being potentially canceled that haven't really been like fully said. Things that barely have even been reported at all. And there's also been like box office tracking for certain things not doing as well as other things. And I think there's a lot of different factors in play. Like, well, maybe I'll make a video about the Captain Marvel situation, but like I am noticing just by now, and I think this is true of Blue Beetle as well. You can say superhero fatigue is part of it, but the idea that these actors are not allowed to promote their movies, and they should be striking. What Disney and these big companies are trying to do with AI is bizarre, and the different profit sharing, things like that. Like, the actors deserve to be compensated fairly. I do feel bad for your Iman Vellani's, your Joel Maridueñas, who are missing out on these big press tours. And I do think, even though like you go, well, nobody watches late night TV, it's like maybe, but those clips get watched on YouTube, and that does help people get excited about the movie. And you see this star being excited about it. Like, you would see Brie and Teyana and Iman, you know, palling around doing some interview where they like eat hot wings or whatever, and people would be like, oh, those guys are cool, I like seeing them. Because that is a lot of Marvel, right? A lot of these movies are fun, and they're, you know, well-made action comedies usually, but also the charisma of the stars and this chemistry is something that like separates it from a lot of other similar movies. And like, that's, you know, that's what we love about Iron Man, Captain America, is like they're just fun to watch. And I do think it really helps that we see them on TV, on like Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, or whatever, or maybe a clip that gets shared on TikTok, and we go, oh yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is a fun guy, interesting guy. Hey, you know what? He's got a Civil War movie coming out. Can't wait to see that. Like, that I think helps. Like, I don't think it's a shock that the last big premiere before the actor strike was Oppenheimer. This humongous, like, very big grossing movie that everyone loved. Like, obviously it was good. And I do think like publicity and stuff like that does affect the movies. Anyway, Loki's good. I like Loki. I think Loki's cool. There have been a couple shots of the Ouroboros entrance where you can see his office, and there's pipes that do kind of look like Loki horns. So, I don't know. Maybe he's a Loki variant. I don't know. But I like the show a lot. I'm looking forward to more of it, and I'm happy that it's good. We're lucky that we have a good Loki show.